It's time now for a look through the press with Deepti Laurent. And Deepti, cardinals will gather in the Sistine Chapel next week to begin voting on the new pope. But there's a lot of focus on it already today.
Yeah, absolutely. The Papal Conclave garnering a lot of interesting coverage in the press this Friday. A lot of different angles as well, Oliver. Let's start with the Philippine Star here, not going with it on its major story, but just down the bottom on its front page, it notes that 3 Filipino cardinals will be participating in the Papal Conclave next week. It doesn't sound like a lot of cardinals, but it's actually the highest number ever of Filipino cardinals in a conclave. And for this paper, it's a sign of the country's rising influence within the Catholic Church. Let's turn our focus to Le Temps now, the Swiss paper here, talking about what it sees as the spheres of influence in the Vatican. The Swiss paper has also sort of mapped out some of the leading candidates to be Pope, who they think could be contenders to be the next Pope. Notably, this man here, the Archbishop of Manila, Luis Antonio Tagle, he could be, if elected, the Church's first Pope from Asia, and he's seen as someone who would largely continue in the work of the late Pope Francis, with a focus on helping the poor and migrants. Other candidates include Fridolin Ambango Besundo, carrying the African continent's hopes of electing the first African Pope ever. Budapest Archbishop Peter Erdo, a conservative, is described as also someone who's liked by moderates. And you have the Archbishop of New York, someone seen as close to Trump, who would very much be at the service of an conservative America.
And you've also found an article in Politico that looks at how ultra-conservatives are trying to seize this opportunity to push a more conservative agenda in the church.
Even a hardline one, you could say, Oliver. This is obviously, there is a difference between conservatives and ultra-conservatives, and we're really looking at that in Politico's article here. The ultra-conservatives wanting to make the Vatican great again, Politico says. Some of these hardline conservatives see the late Pope Francis as heretic, even the Antichrist, for a supposedly liberal outlook and conciliatory stance, particularly on same-sex unions, divorce and migrants. Now they're hoping to strike, even Politico says, using smear tactics to push candidates like a bishop in Kazakhstan, for instance, who has called the refugees in Europe a mass invasion leading to Islamization, and also a pro-Trump candidate. They're also hoping a hardline pope would bring the focus more on pro-life and family rather than climate change and immigration. There's also a lot of talk about the women. What about women in all of this? Well, that's what La Croix, the French paper, looks on its front page. What women hope from the Papal Conclave. It has asked a number of women, some theologians, some secular journalists, essayists, a whole range of women to give their thoughts. And one of the comments that systematically comes back is the role of women in the Catholic Church, and also a push for women to also be allowed to participate in that Papal Conclave.
And moving on to the US, where Donald Trump has fired, or perhaps just demoted, Mike Waltz as National Security Advisor.
Yeah, some might say failing upwards as well. It seems inevitable given the recent signal scandals. Now Donald Trump has removed Waltz and nominated him as ambassador for the UN, what some see as a sort of soft landing for the disgraced National Security Advisor. For the British magazine The Economist, his demotion is also a loss for defense hawks, particularly international Republican hawks. The magazine explaining also that Waltz leaves at a very crucial time, that minerals deal with Ukraine, strikes against Houthis in Yemen, and uncertainty in general around America's defense posture in the world. And the Washington Post sort of builds on that in this article here, saying the real reasons behind Waltz's ousting are a lot more ideological. A sort of battle is emerging within the Trump administration. Waltz representing the hawks, sometimes called neocons, who've been pitted against allies of Vice President J.D. Vance, who are called neo-isolationists. Now, despite Waltz's major blunders, he was seen by many as a stabilizing force. His interim replacement is Marco Rubio, and as the New York Times explains, he will add now a fourth title to all his responsibilities. He is Secretary of State. He's also an acting administrator for the U.S. Agency for International Development. He's acting archivist for the National Archives Administration and now interim National Security Advisor. As the Times notes, he holds more titles than Henry Kissinger and China's Xi Jinping. And he's basically the secretary of everything now.
Jack of all trades, master of I won't comment. And finally from you, Dipti, an existential debate has obsessed the internet recently. Who would win in a fight between one gorilla and 100 men? Now primatologists are even weighing in.
Well, everyone from the White House to Mike Tyson have been giving their opinion on who would win in a fight between 100 men and one gorilla. Well, the president of the Dian Fossey Gorilla Fund, Tara Storinsky, has given her expert opinion, saying she thinks humans would win because they would be able to attack gorillas from behind and from the front and from the side and basically wear the gorilla down. Obviously, that's not to underestimate a gorilla's pure strength, capable of creating, I quote, human mash. Somebody also asked ChatGPT, who felt, though, that the gorilla would win by sheer strength, adding that 100 men would likely panic or flee. So I love the fact that ChatGPT really understands the fallibility of human courage, that in fight or flight, we would most likely get right out of that situation.
Well, ChatGPT certainly has my number there, because I would panic and flee. Thank you very much, Dipti Laurent. And that's all we have time for now.